Welcome back to the All Out Fighting YouTube channel. As you can hear, it's quite loud. We're just at Trafalgar Square where the weigh-ins ahead of Anthony Joshua against Daniel Dubois have taken place. As everyone, Ned Keating, joined again by Martin Domin. And Martin, you can see the crowds here. We're going to see far more again tomorrow night. Before we get onto the weights of the two fighters, just want to talk about the receptions that they had from the fans here. If Daniel Dubois didn't realise that he was, for want of a better term, the villain in this piece, he got that awakening tonight, didn't he? Anthony Joshua given a raucous welcome onto the stage by the crowd here.
Yeah, I don't know if Daniel Dubois is well known enough to be a villain or if he's ever done anything to be considered a villain, but you're right, he certainly is the underdog in this fight, certainly not the crowd favourite, but people haven't seen Daniel Dubois fight in the same way they've seen Anthony Joshua fight. Anthony Joshua has been in our consciousness really since 2012, since the Olympics, and then for 12 years now as a professional. Daniel Dubois very much fought on smaller scenes, but you're right, Anthony Joshua, a firm crowd favourite, singing his name, he laps it up as he does, and I can only imagine, what was it, maybe 1,000 people here tonight, times up by 96, and it'll be a lot louder on Saturday night.
In terms of the two fighters, what did we make of their weights? We'll start with Anthony Joshua first. I know he weighed in second, and that seemed a little bit strange again, you know, champion, everything else that kind of comes with it. But in terms of Anthony Joshua's weight, is there anything that we can read into that in terms of a game plan for tomorrow night?
No, I don't think so. I don't think we can read too much into either man's weight. I think Joshua's been quite steady now for some time. For his last few fights, there was a point in his career where he did go up and down a little bit, but very similar weights actually between the two men, which if they were not, why change anything now? Joshua 4 fights in a row, Dubois 2 wins in a row, both in good form, no need to change anything. It's obviously heavyweight, there's no limit, but also little small changes between fights just don't mean very much. You know, it's a big meal, or a trip to the toilet, it changes your weight very quickly.
In terms of the fighters as well, going into this, and well, perhaps we'll say their promoters, they've both been saying quite a lot about how it's going to be Hearn, Hagler, the British version of it. Both Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren have not been trying saying that. Are we going to get that tomorrow, or is this a risk of perhaps, being a little bit too cagey? We're not going to get that 3-round all-out warfare that we saw with Hagler Hearn. That maybe these two guys might want to size each other up a little bit first, rather than kind of throw everything at it from round one.
I think as long as Daniel Dubois handles the occasion, I think it may well be a slower start. I think it was Eddie who said that if Daniel doesn't handle it and comes out fast, then Joshua's got no choice but to answer back. I think that's the only way. It is like Hagler Hearn, it is fast-paced, it is done in 2 or 3 rounds. I think more likely, if Daniel's got his head on, he's sensible, and they both take the time, work into the fight, and eventually it will get going. I would be staggered if he doesn't get going, but it might take more than a few rounds.
So we're still confident it won't be the full 12 rounds then?
No, I just can't see it. I cannot see it playing out that way in my head. I cannot see it after 36 minutes. It lasting for 36 minutes. Because at one point, one or the other of them will get to the other, and both good finishers, and that'll be it. That'll be all over.
We've spoken already a lot about this week about how much this fight means to both fighters, but in terms of promoters, for Eddie Hearn, he was trounced in that Matchroom versus Queensbury card in Riyadh season, which obviously Daniel Dubois won on to set up this fight with Anthony Joshua. For Matchroom, for Eddie Hearn, for his pride, how much does he need a victory at Wembley tomorrow night?
He does need a victory. Anthony Joshua has long been his golden goose, and perhaps even more so now because he doesn't have the fighters coming through to necessarily follow him. He's got plenty of good fighters, but nobody like Anthony Joshua who can sell out Wembley, who can make him as much money. Let's not forget Eddie Hearn will be short of a penny this weekend. So he does need it, and he needs it for next year as well to go into bigger fights. Again, if we assume this fight's not going to go the distance, and if Anthony Joshua loses, he gets knocked out, it's not just a defeat, it's a bad defeat, and it's difficult to see when he goes after that.
Let's talk a little bit about the undercard though as well. Obviously some great fights that we're going to have before the action tomorrow night. We'll start, you can kind of pick actually here if you want. Which one of those fights are you probably looking forward to the most before the main event?
For once, it's you cannot say there's a bad fight on the card starting very early with Mark Chambers and Josh Bagley. But I think in terms of action, Josh Warrington and Anthony Kakachi doing it again like the main event cannot disappoint. unfortunately not for the IBF World football title, only the IBO, but Joshua winds on again. He talks about anti-Joshua's fans. I think 10,000 from Leeds coming down to Wembley, a lot of them here today. That one, again, for as long as that one lasts, should be great. Willie Hutchinson, I tell you what, a big travelling support for Scotland, got to give them a shout out. Loudo Scotland played while he faced off with Joshua Boatsy. I suspect Joshua Boatsy will look just too much for him, but again, a fight they think, if it does take off at some point, it will be a classic. Hunter Shiraz should be a good display of why he is one of the big stars in British boxing, or rising stars at least. Honestly, it doesn't always happen with boxing. You say you should be in early to catch all the fights, but if you're going tomorrow night, on Saturday night, you should be there early and you should catch all the fights.
We're expecting a few faces as well ringside for a big action. We're expecting Alexander Usyk to be there. We're expecting Tyson Fury to be in Wembley Stadium as well. Does that put more pressure on Anthony Joshua wanting to keep up with these two? Of course, they've got their rematch to come in December, and the chances are the winner of this fight probably goes up against the winner of that one. Does that put more pressure on Anthony Joshua, those two guys being there, to have to not just deliver a win, deliver a performance that puts them both on notice as well?
Honestly, probably not, because it's not the first time it's happened. They all tend to now be at each other's fights. I'm sure a few of the Usyk's been made. It's worth their while to come over and sit at ringside. And Joshua will say that he's only focused on Daniel Dubois, and he probably is only focused on Daniel Dubois. He knows if he beats Daniel Dubois, he is world champion. He knows that he is therefore the man who stands between Usyk or Fury and undisputed status again next year. So, he needs to do his part, and he can then sit back and wait for their rematch in December.
Let's just finish this up with your final thoughts on the main event before we get to tomorrow night's action. How does it go? If you could kind of see it, I mean, we've spoken a little bit briefly about it. You've already said that it isn't going to be a 12-round contest. It probably is someone's going to land a knockout blow at some point. But how do you kind of see it going round by round? Who's going to get the early exchanges in? Who's going to get the better of those early exchanges? And is there going to be a twist perhaps midway through, like we saw with Fury Usyk as well?
As I said, I do think it will be cagey for the first couple of rounds, maybe 2 or 3 rounds. Daniel Dubois does get hit. We saw that against Filip Hrgovic. I'm sure he went into that fight obviously not anticipating getting hit quite as much, but he did. I'm sure he'll have worked on that since then, but he will get hit by Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua probably hits a lot harder than Hrgovic. So that's what I think will happen at some point. Maybe rounds 4 or 5, Joshua will start to get to him with that right hand. Middle of the rounds, he'll start to come out on. Maybe 6 or 7, 8 if you're lucky. Referee steps in. Anthony Joshua, 3-time heavyweight champion of the world.
There you go, you heard it here first. Anthony Joshua to win in, what was it, the 8th round, wasn't it there? Right, so there you go. If you fancy a tip, that's it there from Martin. And for me as well for the time being. Of course, you can keep up to date with all the latest ahead of the big fight, and of course all the post-fight reaction to come as well across the Daily Mirror website and all of Mirror Fighting's social platforms. But for now, it's goodbye.